Hello team and welcome back to the channel. So before we start, I would request you please subscribe to the channel. We are very close to 50,000 subscribers. Also team, this video is going to be really useful for people who are looking for like giving DevOps interviews as well as people who wanted to transition. Okay, because this video is about the most common issues or errors that we get with different DevOps tools and how we can fix it. That also I'm going to explain. Also, many of you have asked me some like a demo video from my batch 3 course. Okay, so this is you can consider this also as a demo video because I have shared this with my batch 3 people also. Okay, and yeah, batch 4, for those who wanted to join batch 4, it's starting from 10th of March. And let me explain you some syllabus, like what exactly we are going to cover and in what ways we are going to cover. Okay, so yeah, make sure to check out all the links in the description. Okay, first thing, so batch 4 is starting from 10th of March and you can enroll now. Okay, and if you enroll now you will get a discount of 20%. So general cost is 8,000, but if you enroll now you'll get a discount of 20% and you can get this course for around like 6,500 or something. Okay, talking about the course that I'm going to teach you, first of all, talking about the general information. So we are going to have live sessions on weekends 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. IST hours, and weekdays I'm going to share some custom recorded videos. When I say custom recorded, that means if you wanted some like a specific scenario on which I can make a video, so I'll be making a video on that. Okay, after that, every Wednesday I'm going to do an interview preparation session so that I can guide you what exactly you should focus on. And with respect to every module, we are going to have interview sessions every Wednesday. Okay, and yeah, one-to-one connects, obviously lots of people are there who need one-to-one connects, and for that you can just ping me. So in my available time I'll let you know and we can connect on Google Meet. For doubt clearance, again, this can be done if a doubt is like issue is very small, I can clear it on like through Telegram group messages. If it's a big issue, then it's a big doubt or something, then we can connect over Google Meet. Projects, talking about projects, so we are going to have 10 plus full stack projects. When I say full stack, that means there will be front end, back end, database. Okay, in addition to that, we are going to have like microservices based projects as well as different programming languages projects, so that you can understand how different programming languages based projects are built and how they get deployed. After that, corporate projects. So obviously nobody can show corporate projects, and what I'll give you, what kind of projects do we have in companies, what is their architecture, okay, and how they get built and deployed. Those things also I'm going to explain you along with an architecture. Okay, and yeah, every week we are going to have assignments, so make sure to you need to complete that so that you can basically the assignment is going to summarize whatever you learn. Okay, then we have modules. Module 1 is going to be DevOps intro, where we are going to discuss about DevOps as well as the real workflow that happens in companies with respect to DevOps. Then we have Linux. Okay, so all these details you'll be able to find with respect to module, and link will be in the description. Make sure to check that out. Okay, and yeah, again, build tools, Maven, .NET, Python, Node.js, everything we are going to cover in properly. Okay, and for CI/CD tools, Jenkins will be deep dive. In GitHub Actions, I'll show you how you can set it up and how we can write CI/CD pipelines for a full stack application for build and deployment. Then same thing for GitLab CI/CD, and again we are going to do the same thing for Azure as well as AWS code pipeline. Troubleshooting and assignments, for everything every module you are going to get an assignment which will summarize everything. Okay, which is going to prepare you properly. Coming next, security. So security, this time I am going to use 4 security tools: SonarQube, Trivy, Prowler, Docker. So these are covering complete DevOps from security point of view. Then we have artifact management. So artifact management, you know, like when we build application, we get artifact as a byproduct. We are going to manage it through different tools. Like Nexus, it is one of the most widely used tools. Then we have code artifacts in AWS, then Azure artifacts in Azure. Okay. Then we have Docker. So Docker also we need to cover very deep because it's one of the most important topics. So for Docker, we have multi-stage Docker file, Docker images, Docker containers, container manipulation, debugging, network, Docker compose, Docker volumes. Okay, and again, everything will be hands-on, so you don't like forget. And also I'll teach you how to write Docker files also so that you can easily write it. Then we have Kubernetes. Obviously it needs to be deep dive. Setup, self-hosted, EKS, AKS, all 3 kinds of we are going to set up Kubernetes. Then we have architecture and workflow, that will be completely deep dive. Then Kubernetes components, writing YAML files, scaling in Kubernetes, then deploying applications with databases as well as persistent volumes. Liveness probe, readiness probe, resource management, debugging and fixing issues, everything will be there. ISE like Terraform and Ansible, we are going to cover in deep dive with multiple projects which can be easily mentioned in your resume. Then we have Azure DevOps. Azure DevOps also as a part of Cloud DevOps, we are going to cover it from scratch and complete full stack CI/CD pipelines along with an assignment. Monitoring Grafana and Prometheus, we are going to work with hands-on. Okay. And then most important, resume. So I'll be guiding you properly how to make resume, what kind of projects you can mention, how you can explain the projects, everything I'm going to explain, like help you with that. And obviously corporate projects understanding, so that you know how things happen in companies. So this will be the syllabus of my upcoming batch 4. So if you are interested, you can enroll to that. Right now, coming to today's topic, so I'll be showing you how we can troubleshoot things, what kind of issues we get with respect to every DevOps tools. So make sure to check that out as well. Hello team, so today we are going to discuss about the different troubleshooting things with respect to different DevOps tools. Okay. And so first what I want to get started with is Jenkins, right? So let's do that. Let me write here Jenkins. Okay, talking about what kind of general errors that we get with respect to Jenkins. First errors usually, like let's say when you are trying to clone a repository and you are not providing the credential. Okay, so if you don't provide the credentials, you are going to get error 128. If you provide wrong credentials, you may get 401 or 403. Okay, that is no credential. Okay, and that is wrong credential. Okay, another like error that we usually get with Jenkins is 137. Okay, so when we get error like 137, basically it means that out of memory error. That means if you are running your Jenkins pipeline, it was not having enough memory. Okay, this usually may come if you are using Jenkins master. Okay, for like running your Jenkins pipelines, and that is why it is suggested always that we should run Jenkins pipelines or Jenkins jobs in this matter, like we should have slaves. Okay, once we are having slaves, then we can run our pipeline on Jenkins slaves, which has its own memory storage and everything, instead of running on Jenkins master. Okay, and why I'm saying that we should not run on Jenkins master, usually I'm talking about company scenario. Okay, on local, like when we are making videos, I'm running like everything on master. But when we talk about real-time scenarios, usually we always have Jenkins separate slave virtual machines on which we run. Why we should not run on master? This is because, like, the memory, let's say to master I have given 4 GB of RAM. Okay, so if I have given 4 GB of RAM, then this 4 GB is also being used to manage the Jenkins server, and whatever memory is available, that will be used to run pipeline. Right now, only 4 GB is available and it is being used in this way. Obviously, pipelines will face the issue 137 error. Right, so in order to make sure that we don't run into this kind of error, I suggest like when it comes to companies, we always have separate virtual machines connected to Jenkins server or Jenkins master, you can say, in the form of Jenkins slaves, and we run our applications on this. Okay, in Jenkins, another error that you may found is, like, let's say you are running Docker. So in Docker you may find this error like Docker not found. Okay, or let's say you are using running maven command, and like maven clean or maven compile, you may get the error mvn not found. Okay, so when you see this error, that means the tool that you are trying to use, it's not available or it's not installed. Okay, now these two are different things. When I say not available, okay, that means it may be installed on the machine, but we have not defined it in our pipeline. Okay, so not defined in pipeline. That is the first scenario, right? Second scenario, not found, it may be possible that we have not at all installed this tool, right? So these are two scenarios that we should know, right? Not available and not defined. Sorry, not installed. Not available means we have the tool may be present on the Jenkins, but we have not defined it in our pipelines for usage, right? So that is one case. Secondly, it may not even be installed. So if whatever the case is present, you may like work based on that, right? Let's talk about other errors in Jenkins. Okay. One more error that Obviously talking about this 137 error, there is another solution to this. There are two arguments or opts, you can say Maven opts, known as XMS and XMX. This means initial memory, this means max memory. Okay, so basically, as I mentioned, that 137 error, it means that not enough memory is available for usage, right? So we can basically define these factors in our pipeline, so that pipeline should be using just whatever memory we are defining. For example, if I give you an example, I was just looking on this. Yeah, see. So if you see here, like this is the general pipeline, okay, and we have defined maven opts inside variable, and you can see here xmx 2 GB and xms, this is 512 MB. That means the amount of memory from which this pipeline will be getting started is the 512 MB, and maximum it could use this much. So if you are defining your like variables xms and xmx, then it is possible that easily your pipeline will be running properly. Okay, so this is one kind of error, right? Okay, so yeah, another error, let's talk about, let's say I'm using let's say sonar cube, okay, or let's say I'm using nexus. Okay, for nexus, like I am using nexus to publish our artifacts to nexus server, and sonar cube I am using to publish the sonar cube analyzed reports, right? So in sonar cube, you may get error like, sorry, one second, on sonar cube you may get error like not reachable, or like something like not responding or something, right? On nexus you may get errors like, okay, one second, ha, not reachable, or you may also get unauthorized. Okay, when you get not reachable, that means you need to immediately check if sonar cube server is up and running or not, right? And unauthorized means you need to check the sonar cube token. Okay, I'm talking this with respect to Jenkins. Okay, in nexus also you may get like unauthorized, or like 401 or 403. Okay, when you get this error, that means you need to check the credentials. Okay, another error in Jenkins that you may get with respect to this kind of server is 500 internal server error. Okay, this means server may be down, or may be down for minimal time. Okay, so in order to, usually like when we used to face this kind of issues, then what we used to do is simply restart. Okay, this is the general thing. But in case even after restart it's not working, what you can do, you can go inside like Kubernetes and check the server pod. You can check the server pod if the pod is up and running or not, like that. Okay, if there also you see okay, pod is running but still my application is not accessible, then you can need to do a little bit troubleshooting, which I will show you, which I'll explain you in Kubernetes part. Okay, so these are the general things that team we used to face with respect to Jenkins, and I hope like you can just note it down. Okay, also team, when it comes to like troubleshooting in Jenkins, the way that I would suggest you to check the logs for is always check from the end. Okay, if you have Jenkins log, always start checking it from the end instead of checking it from the up. Okay, this we can do later, like initially start from checking at the end, because the error we will see at the end. Okay, so you can go at the end, start scrolling up, and then you will find. Okay, like that, that is the best option that I can suggest. Okay, that is, so these are basically Jenkins error, right? Okay, let's talk about Git error. What kind of error I used to face actually with respect to Git. Okay, okay, so generally in our previous company we were using our own Git. That means we have set up Git using a like a Docker image, and we were using it by providing some amount of storage and some amount of memory. Okay, same thing we used to provide to clients. Okay, so most common issue obviously it's going to be 128, that is like no credentials, or like 401,
or like 403 for unauthorized, that means wrong credentials. Okay, if you're trying to clone, this is the error you may get, like here no credentials. Okay, sorry. Okay, that is one thing. Sometimes we used to face issues like no s- uh, something like not enough space available. Okay, so as I mentioned ki git we had, it's like hosted on our own servers. So if we didn't, like, that server was not having enough storage, then we used to get this. Okay, so for this resolution, it's like from our side we cannot do much. We used to connect to infra team, ask them to kindly increase or add some storage to this in order to fix this. Okay, then we could then we used to face some errors like when we used to like push some files. Okay, we used to, when we used to try to push some files, it used to give errors. Okay, let me explain you what kind of errors it was giving. Okay, so with respect to another git issue, as I mentioned, while pushing we used to fail error. Why this error was coming? Because the size of the files that we were trying to push was very large. Okay, so in order to fix this, we used to increase the post buffer size. Okay, so it's like a basically feature using which you can increase the amount of files that you can push in one go. Okay, so there is some command git post buffer size, something like that. You need to increase that size. Okay, you can find that on internet basically. Okay, other than this, yeah, sometimes like obviously merge conflict. If you are doing some kind of merging through UI using pull request, so you used to get sometimes merge conflict. The only best possible way to resolve this is to connect to basically uh, like the files in which you are getting merge conflicts. You should connect to the person to whom that file belongs to, or the content that has been committed by that person, and you need to discuss it with that person, and you should be coming on mutual agreement. Okay, you should be coming on mutual agreement. Okay, this file we can remove and this file we can keep, and that is how most conflicts are usually resolved. Okay, this is okay. What else error? I think yeah. With respect to Git, these are the only errors. Sometimes like you may face issues like you are unable to push. Yeah, one more thing, team. Do not forget, since it's been quite some time. I'm not sure if everyone still knows this. So when you are cloning Git repository anywhere, or if you are going to use the Git repository in Jenkins or anywhere, make sure instead of using user and password, you need to use user and token. Okay, this is considered better way and more secure way. So always go with user and token. Okay, and I think these are the only errors that we used to face, and this is how we used to resolve, right? Okay, talking about next tool, so next we have SonarQube. Okay, so in SonarQube, like we use the arguments like -d sonar dot project key, right? Like that. So one error that almost every time we used to face is like that is like common mistake. This K should be capital. You should not forget that. Similarly, we have project name. This N should be capital always. That is one thing. Other than that, we used to call this SonarQube analysis using the tool. How did we call? So that first of all, like tool folder inside which our SonarQube scanner was there. Inside that, let's say sonar scanner, and inside that there is a bin folder, and there finally the sonar dash scanner. Okay, and as I mentioned in today's Ansible session, I was explaining to you that this sonar scanner, it usually the executable file of the tool exists inside bin folder, so make sure to reference this in this format. Okay, so you might get the error not found. Okay, not found means either it may be installed and not defined, or it is not installed. So you need to check in that format. Okay, other than that, again, token should be correct because we used a token for authentication. So token should always be correct, and URL should always be correct. These two things should be correct, right? These are the things, right? Other than this, in SonarQube we used to face sometimes like like for example, like if you are running Java SonarQube analysis, your project code is in Java. Okay, so if you are using Java, you need to define an argument like sorry about that. If you are using Java project, d sonar dot java dot binaries. That means we need to provide the path of the binaries file, which usually exists inside the target inside classes folder, I think, somewhere like that. Okay, so usually I just put it dot. So you need to make sure that this argument is added in order for Java applications to work well. Okay. Other than that, in Sonar Cube, let me check. So this is been not found, so and so. Okay. Other than this, you won't be facing any specific issues. Just not found and token a URL. If it is not correct, you may face error. Okay. As well as then, yeah, if you are using Java-based applications, this. Okay. And other than that is Sonar Cube. Yeah, one more error that you may face is like not reachable. Okay, not reachable means you need to check if SonarCube server is up and running or not. Okay, that thing. Other than that, again 500 error you may get. That means you need to either restart or again check if it is up and running or not. Okay, 500 internal server error. That means to whichever server you wanted to connect, it is not up and running like that. Okay, that you may check. And with respect to SonarCube, one more error that you may get most of the times, usually like again memory issue. Okay, if since SonarCube is also stores like projects, so if it does not have enough memory available or storage available, it may not function well. Okay, so that also we need to make sure. But yeah, these are the general things. Achha, with respect to SonarCube also, I will tell you the most important that I used to use in my interviews. Okay, so they asked me like since I mentioned I used to do troubleshooting also, and they asked me okay, what kind of troubleshooting, just give us some examples. So I'll tell you. So let's say our Sonar Cube was deployed inside Kubernetes. Okay, and every quarter we used to upgrade Sonar Cube. Okay, that means we used to upgrade to LTS version. Okay, long-term support as well as the latest LTS version like that. Okay, we used to upgrade. So one time what happened that Sonar Cube, even though it was deployed, the container the container inside which SonarCube was running, it was facing issue and was not getting created. Okay, so in that case what we needed to do is go inside the Docker Kubernetes pod. Okay, we need to go inside the pod, and there we need to go inside a specific section, a specific folders, started something like this: extensions, plugins. Okay, inside this folder you will find all the SonarCube plugins. So there we were seeing that there was one plugin, something like Java or something. Okay, its version was 1.0. Okay, .jar, and there was same plugin with different version 1.1 .jar. So if single plugin is existing with multiple versions, it may give error. Okay, what you need to do is simply remove the older versions. Okay, remove that, and it will, and then again restart, then it will work fine. Okay, this we will discuss in little bit more detail also when we are in Kubernetes. Okay, so these are the only errors that we used to get with respect to SonarCube. Okay, coming to next, so let's talk about Nexus. Nexus also not too much, like when we want to push our artifacts to Nexus, what we need to do? First of all, we need to make sure that the credentials for accessing Nexus and the Nexus repo URL, these two things should be correct. If not, 100%, and every time you will face 401, 403 like that, you will keep facing. That means credentials are not correct, you need to fix it. Okay, and yeah, as you know, credentials we add in settings.xml file, Nexus repo URL we add in pom.xml file. This is the case of Java. In other, they have their other configuration. Okay, this is the general error that we get with respect, and other than this, 500 internal server error. Okay, internal server error. Here what we need to do, we need to check, first of all we need to check if Nexus is up or not. Okay, up or running or not, we need to check this. Other than this, if we check okay it is up, then again we need to go deep, or see if it is up, immediately you will rerun your pipeline. Okay, that you need to run. So and yeah, see, mostly if Nexus, if you see Nexus is up, then you rerun, then it will be resolved most cases. Okay, because 500 eternal server error, it does not usually happen due to specific reasons. Okay, but generally it is solved by like restarting the server or like rerunning the pipeline generally. Okay, but let's say every time you run, it is giving like 500 internal server error or like Nexus server not available like that. Okay, Nexus server not available. If every time you are getting like this, what you need to check, you need to check the logs of server Nexus. And most common error that every time you may get is that storage is less than 4 GB. Okay, that means ki the minimum storage for because there is a the database that is used within Nexus is known as Orient DB. Okay, so for this to work well, minimum it should be 4 4 GB. Sorry, the available storage, it should be equal to or greater than 4 GB of storage. If it is not available, then this will like crash and this DB will crash and Nexus won't be able to run properly. Okay, so this was one of the error that we used to face, and for to fix it, we just like asked the infra team to add more storage. Okay, so this is like, and as I mentioned, with respect to Nexus, these are the only things that you will get the errors to, like, because for example, like this credentials should be correct, repo URL. If these things are not correct, obviously you are going to get 401 403, right? Then again 500 internal server error, that usually happens when like server is not up and running. Okay, or like due to some network issue, it may be down for few seconds. So for that reason, I say ki just to confirm, you should run one time. The if server is up and running, you will see just rerun the pipeline. Okay, but still, if you are facing multiple times 500 internal server error, then you should go into Nexus logs to check. Okay, I'm talking about Nexus logs, SonarQube logs, right? But I will show you how we can check those as well. Okay, don't worry. So as I mentioned, if you are again and again facing internal server error and all, make sure to check the logs. What exactly is the issue? And most common issue that we used to face is Orient DB. There is a DB existing inside Nexus. For it to work well, that helps like Nexus to up and run, minimum storage that should be available is 4 GB. Okay, that is for Nexus. Coming to Docker. Okay, so in Docker, as you know, the most, see, wherever we have with whichever tool we are using credentials. Okay, so there is 100% chance that we may face unauthorized. Okay, that you can just note it down. Unauthorized 401 403 like that. Okay, so with Docker also, usually when we want to access Docker, we run the command docker run -u, then username, right, -p for password, then registry URL, right? But usually we don't put password like this because it becomes visible. Okay, so when we want to access like when we want to connect to Docker, we run docker login like that, and if the credential is not correct, obviously we are going to get this error, right? That is one error. Secondly, sometimes it happens when you are running docker command, but Docker is not at all installed on the virtual machine where you are running. So you will get the error Docker not found. Okay. Secondly, thirdly, that you should know, when you install Docker, when you set up Docker, what happens, that Docker is by default root user has the access to run Docker commands. Okay. Root user only has the access to the run Docker commands. And meanwhile, if we want to make sure that, let's say I'm working with Ubuntu user, right? I'm working with Ubuntu user and I want Ubuntu user to be able to run Docker commands. What we need to do? So let me tell you two things. We go to here. Where is it? Okay. Give me 1 second. Let me check. Okay. See, generally, we have one command. Yeah, this one. This one you see, this command. Usually on YouTube and everywhere I have shown this command, but trust me, this command is not secure because this is a socket file which should not be given access to everyone. Here what we are giving access so that all the users can have access to run Docker commands, which is not a good practice. Okay. But when it comes to like following the best practice in order to run Docker command, see this is good for when you want to just do some test on your personal server. This is good, right? It's not going to affect. But in production, we are not going to do this. In production, when we want some specific user to run Docker commands, what we are going to do, use user modification command, user mod -ag. Okay, let me, one second, let me write it somewhere so that I can explain you. Sudo user mod -a g, then it was Docker, then Ubuntu, right? Just let me check if I have written the command correct. Yes. Okay. Now let me explain what exactly happening here. So here what we are doing, generally what will happen, a user that gets created, for example, like we have Ubuntu user. Okay. So Ubuntu user is going to be, Ubuntu user will have its own group. Okay. Ubuntu group, right? So in order, so group also has specific permissions. So whatever permissions Ubuntu group has, same permissions Ubuntu user will be having, right? So now what we want Ubuntu user to have permissions that are available inside Docker group, correct? This is Docker. This is Docker group basically. Okay. When we install Docker, a user will be created and a Docker group will be created. Okay. So in order for Ubuntu to run Docker commands or any other user to run Docker commands, what it needs to done, this user needs to be part of this group as well. So whatever permissions this group has, then this user will also be having. Okay. Now, good thing that you should know, कि one user can be part of multiple groups. Now this user, if it is connected to Docker group also, so Ubuntu user will be having permissions that is on Ubuntu group and permissions that is on Docker group. Okay. Now one very important thing you should know, that we are here like adding or appending groups. We are not removing the previous group, we are just adding another group. For that reason we are using -small a. There are two ways, hyphen this and -ag. If you use this capital AG, then it's going to remove the previous group, which is not good. That's why we are using -small ag, so that whatever permissions this having, that that should be also available to Ubuntu user, and whatever permission Docker group is having, that should also be available to Ubuntu user, right? So once you have run this command, then whatever user you define here, that user should be able to run Docker commands. But for this changes to apply, we need to like log in, log out. Okay. So instead of doing login, log out, you can just run this command, new grp docker. Okay. And once you run this command, let me just check if it is correct now. Yes. So once you run this command, then what will happen? Then your user will instantly be able to run Docker commands. Okay. That thing, correct? Now, yes. Talking about more errors in Docker. Okay. So while building Docker images, we run this command, right? Docker. Sorry. While building Docker images, so one second. So sorry, I'm using this. It's not very long since I have started using this. Okay, sorry, it's very small. Okay, so in case when we want to build Docker images, we run the command docker build -t. Let's say I want to provide the name as Adi Jaiswal slash let's say image. Okay, one. Okay, so if you run this command, it is supposed to build Docker image, right? And it will give you error. Okay, it will give you some error, something like Docker file not found. Okay, so basically at the end, no, it will give you error, uh, argument, something like that. Okay, argument related error. That basically it means that it does not know which Docker file it should use to build a Docker image. So we need to make sure we are defining here the path of Docker file. Okay, so path, how we can define? Either we can run this command inside the folder where Docker file exists. So if you are running in that case, you need to just put a dot. That means Docker file is in current directory. Okay. In case you are running this command somewhere else and Docker file is somewhere else, so we need to run in this manner. Docker build -t, then the let's say just yeah, just sorry, I'm writing a small image name. Okay, then here we should write -f. Let's say my file is inside target folder. Okay, my file is inside target folder, so Docker file is here. Docker file will write, then we will put dot. That means Docker file is inside target folder, and then it should be working fine. Okay, another error with respect to Docker that you may get is that key, let's say I want to create a container, so I will run the command docker run -d -p. Let's say I'm writing 8080 colon 8080. This is host port, this is container port, and this is some image I'm using. Okay, so if this host port is occupied, means let's say I'm running Jenkins on host port 8080, right? So it will give us key this port 8080 is not available. Okay, not available, or it may say key it is already used. So in that case, host port we can simply change it to 8081, so that this port is not being used by anything else, and then we can use this port. Okay, that is thing. Sometimes like you may not see general error, and you like, let's say container is running, our container is already running, up and running, but after some time it is facing some issue, or the application which is running inside the container, that is facing some issue. Okay, and that issue we are not able to find what exactly is this. So we need to basically go inside the container logs, we need to check the logs. So we can check that docker logs, and then the container name or container ID. Container. So using this we can check the logs, and based on logs we need to perform some task. Okay, based on this log I need to do this or do that, whatever. Okay, so these are some of the errors. I think this is more than enough with respect to Docker. These are certain errors that we may face most of the times. Okay, now after Docker, let's talk about Kubernetes, which is one of the most important part. Okay, so Kubernetes, let's say I'm talking about the most errors that I have actually faced in my company. Okay, most common error while deploying you may face, which is image pull back off error. Okay, so if you face this issue, like for deploying an application to Kubernetes, what we do? So image pullback of error. So like when we have the YAML manifest files which we use for deployment of application to Kubernetes, right? So that YAML file, inside that YAML file, we define the name of the Docker image also, which we are going to use, right? So sometimes it happens that we may use a Docker image that exists inside a private Docker registry, right? And for that we need to define the credentials and secrets and all, right? So if we have not defined that, you may get this error, image pullback of error. That thing was. Secondly, image it may not even exist. Okay, so if the image does not exist, then also you may get image pullback of error. That means if image does not exist, obviously it cannot pull back of error. When usually this error will come, image does not exist thing. Sometimes usually what happens, like DevOps engineer, sometimes by mistake, silly mistake, we write the name wrongly, name of the like Docker image wrongly. In that case, obviously it's going to say image pullback of error, because image may not be available. Okay, there could be some other reasons also due to which Kubernetes may not be able to get the able to pull the Docker image. Okay, but again, this could be miscellaneous errors which we cannot understand beforehand. Once it happens, then we start troubleshooting this. Then we may able to know. Okay, because of this reason, it's not able to like pull back. Okay, then let's say another error that is very common, which is crash loop. Crash loop back off. Okay, this is also a very common error that happens, and the thing is key, there is no one specific reason which I can tell you because of this it happens. It can happen due to any specific reason, but that reason how we can find once we see the logs of the pod. Until unless see the logs logs of the pod, we may not be able to identify why this crash loop back off error happens. Okay, how do we see the logs of pod? So for that, I have covered this in Kubernetes, I think. We had to run the command kubectl logs, then pod name. Okay, pod name. And once we have the logs available, then we can decide what we need to do. For example, SonarQube example that I was giving you, right? Key, inside SonarQube plugins folder, we had Java 1.0.jar and another plugin that we had Java 1.1.jar. Okay, sorry. So if this kind of error we are facing, what we need to do? We need to obviously remove this file with lower version. So how we can do that? From logs we can find this, right? Okay, there are multiple versions, but how we can remove this? So generally in Linux we need to remove. We run the command rm, then let's say java.1.0.jar. Using this command we can remove it, right? So but how do we execute command on the pod? So for that we have kubectl exec -it means interactive terminal. Exec means execute -it interactive terminal, then pod name where we want to execute, and then the terminal, the kind of terminal which we want to use. For example, you can write bin/bash. So once you execute this command, it will take you inside the pod. Basically, it will open a terminal where you can run the commands inside the pod. Okay, so once we are inside the pod, the terminal inside the pod structure is similar to Linux. Basically, we use the Linux image generally, right? So the structure will be Linux type, and we can go inside the Linux folder, and we can go to this this specific file folder extensions/plugins. This is case of SonarQube, right? Plugins. Then here we may find these two jar file, and we can remove the one jar file. Okay, sorry, one plugin file. Okay, so in this way we can like fix this issue. Okay, and this is the same issue that I would request every one of you, if you are going for interviews, this is the best example that you can mention, because here you can explain okay, for like understanding crash loop backup error, we need to check the logs of pod. How you can check? Kubectl logs pod name, then you can find the issue. To resolve it, you can open the terminal. How you can open the terminal of the pod? Kubectl exec -it pod name, then it will take you to a terminal where you can execute commands for this pod, and then you can whatever task need to done in order to fix the issue, you can do that, right? Now as I mentioned, the crash loop backup error, it may happen due to many other reasons also, so many other reasons. Okay, but again those reasons are known to us only when we see the logs. There is no predefined error for crash loop backup error. Okay, that you should know. For image pull back off error, we can say okay, the image may not be available, the credentials may be wrong, right? Or the image spelling is wrong, like that. So we can understand, right? But for crash loop back off error, it's not predefined. Until unless we check the logs, then only we will get to know. Okay, so this is one error. Okay, so I think these are the general errors that I have faced with respect to these tools. Okay, and I think this is more than enough for you to figure out like what things you can explain. Okay, and you know, I do understand like most of you are going to transition, so I'll be taking a live session, and I'll be explaining what kind of projects you can mention in order to utilize this troubleshooting things. Okay, I'll discuss that as well. Okay. Okay, team. So let's talk about some of the errors that I have faced with respect to Linux. Okay. So one of the most common errors that we used to face is like accessibility issues. Okay. Basically, a client used to say, since like client used to purchase VMs from us itself, right? So if they have like VM purchased and they are using it, but after some days they are saying that it is not accessible. Okay. So in that case, what we used to do, first of all, in order to make sure that we can check if the VM that they are sharing, it belongs to us. So for that, what we used to do, we used to run this command ns lookup. Okay, and then the IP address of the VM. Okay, so basically this command, what it's going to do is going to give you server details and much more details about the VM. So from those details, we can see if like our company name was written there in server details, then we can understand like, okay, this VM belongs to us. Okay, so that was the first check that we used to do. So after that, once like we say okay, we have like able to check that details. After that, we used to first of all run this command, which is one of the most simple command, ping IP address. Okay, so basically this is going to let us know if the VM is up and running or not. Okay, if the VM is up and running or not. So from here we can understand, because see, one of the probability that may happen ki VM may not be up, that is why connection is not happening, right? So in order to make sure that we check VM is up and not, so we can run this ping command to check if the VM is up or not. If we are getting response, that means VM is up. Okay, so that was thing. After that, we used to use this command telnet. Okay, so telnet command, we can use it for connecting to a server. Okay, for establishing a TCP connection. Okay, for example, let's say I want to connect to this server. Obviously, one specific port is always open, 22, which is SSH. Okay, because every Linux machine it uses SSH a lot. So in order to check if the like we are able to establish connection to that VM, we can run the command telnet, then IP address of that VM, then 22. So if it works, we could get some response. Then we can say, okay, machine is up and running and we are able to establish connection. Okay. Other than 22, we can use this also, telnet IP 80. Okay. This is like trying to connect on port 80. This is for port 22. Port 22, as you know, it is for SSH. Okay. So these two things we used to do to check if the VM is up and running. Okay, so in this way we can like troubleshoot with respect to the VM key, if it is up and not, if it is working or not, like that. And sometimes we used to suggest, one of the most common suggestions that we used to give is reboot. Okay, because reboot usually fixes everything. And also like I think we have this command mem info or something like that, I'm not sure, but I will just get to like mention this in documentation. There is a command which will check the memory information, how much like memory is there. Okay, other than that, we have this command also, df-kh. So it's going to give you information about the storage, how much is available, how much is occupied. So we used to check all these things, and based on that only we can conclude this is the issue or that is the issue. Correct? So this was one of these situations we used to do with respect to working with a virtual machine. Okay. Other than this, there are many common errors that you might face every day, which is like permission denied, which is the most common error. Where what we need to do, we need to either change permissions, or we can change ownership, right, of the file, or what else we can do. For example, like in Docker also, explained you how we are getting permission denied, how to fix it, right? So this is one thing. Then other things like if we are like copying some files or doing something with a file, we may get some error, file not found, right? Then we need to check if file is present or not present, like that. Correct? Then one common error that I faced with respect to this tool, OWASP dependency check. Okay. So yeah, let me explain you the scenario, what exactly issue we was facing. So in Jenkins, when you run the analysis for OWASP dependency check, basically what happens, OWASP need to update its database, right? That means it needs to connect to internet, because the database that is available on internet, so it needs to connect to internet. So what issue I was facing, that through my I was running the job, see, like we had Jenkins, okay, and we had slave, okay. So I was running my Jenkins pipeline on this slave 2. This is slave 1, this is slave 2. But every time it went to OS dependency check stage, it was failing. Okay. So after a certain time, when we like started checking the logs and everything, we saw that from Jenkins slave, it was not able to connect to internet. Okay. Or basically the website where it needs to check the website of the database from where it updates its like information, right? So that was not happening. So basically uh, we come to conclusion, okay, the this website, it is not whitelisted. When I say this word whitelisted, that means कि uh, from this VM we are not allowed to access this website. Okay, it the like that. Okay, so for that, see, whitelisting, because I did not know at the time how to fix it. So I found out, okay, this is the reason. I found out that whitelisting is not done for this website, so that from slave, slave is not allowed to connect to outside. So in order to make sure and maintain security side by side, infra team from our like project, they provided access to this website. That means they whitelisted this website so that slave 2 is allowed to connect to this website. Okay, so once that was done, then OS dependency check was working fine. Okay, so this was, and see, with Linux basically you won't face many like critical issues. Okay, most of the issues you can troubleshoot by just working with it. And to be very frank, Linux knowledge will come once you start using it as much as you could. Slowly you will learn a lot of things with respect to Linux, and then only you will learn more about errors of Linux. Okay, but these are some of the errors that we used to face, and there are not so very critical issues, but yeah, these are something that we used to face. Okay.